Thank you. Good evening. We'll start with the superintendent's report.
Thank you very much for coming out tonight. First, I want to start with Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and Happy New Year. There's a lot of stuff coming up in the next couple of weeks. I hope everyone has an opportunity to spend some wonderful time with family and friends and enjoy, kick back for a little bit, hopefully reflect on a wonderful 2019, and certainly project to a wonderful 2020. Really looking forward to that switch. By the way, if you have the debate at home, 2020 doesn't start the new decade. 21 starts the new decade, but we'll call it the new decade anyway. So, next, also, fantastic experience on Monday. We went down, a group of students and some staff members and a bunch of parents, and our chorus went down to see the Radio City Music Hall Christmas Spectacular on Monday. And our middle school chorus performed on stage at Radio City Music Hall before the production. It was absolutely magical. Watching those kids up there with Stephanie Corbett, their director, singing 4 or 5 songs in front of this amazing audience on this just spectacular world stage. You really have to think of Radio City Music Hall as a global experience. It was so magical watching them get so nervous as they were walking up to the stage and then getting onto that stage and singing so wonderfully and getting applause right before this incredible show. It was a magical day, and I'm so proud of them, and thank you for Ms. Corbett who put that together. I know Mr. Malazzo was there. You probably had some.
It was, Radio City holds 6,000 people, and it wasn't quite totally full when they sang, but full enough to be an audience where they, and it was amazing. Between the 6th grade class and the parents and the students that sang, we had over 200 people in that audience from town, and it was amazing. It was nice to see the community come out and support them, and it was just an enjoyable time. Well, the city's enjoyable. This time of year, it's really nice.
Spectacular. So, also, winter recess is a moment for us as well because it marks a point where we're losing someone to retirement. And he's not here tonight because of actually, believe it or not, a previous appointment. So we couldn't force him to come. He had something important to do. But Mr. Cortolano, Bruce Cortolano, is retiring as of the end of this month, basically. So tomorrow he bids farewell to the halls of Marlboro High School and begins his time as a retiree, enjoying some wonderful family time that's really well deserved. So we invited him back for June when we do our retiree celebration, but right now we wish him well and all the health that he can possibly get and enjoy as much of that family time as he possibly can, and certainly come back and visit. So thank you, Bruce Cortolano, for doing such wonderful work for us. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to bring Senator Skoufis, James Skoufis, around to all of our schools. We toured each of the buildings and spent some time with our principals, wandering through, met some teachers, met some staff, met some kids, and really a good opportunity to help him start to learn a little bit more about what Marlboro really is. He's new to us as our state senator. He replaced Senator Larkin and really is prepared and ready to advocate on Marlboro's behalf. So spending that time with him also gave us a lot of opportunity to talk to him about the issues that are most important to Marlboro. He's very familiar with them now because we've spent a lot of time with him, but there's really something that comes from the hallways as you wander through our schools, and he felt it. So he can't wait to come back and see us again. So thank you very much, Senator Skoufis, for spending some time with us. Tonight on the agenda for the board's consideration, I've recommended a interim high school assistant principal for taking over for Mr. Cortolano while we are in the process of looking for a permanent replacement. We should be able to keep this interim for the temporary time period through about spring break. So very soon, within the next couple of days, we anticipate posting for the probationary opening and beginning the full search for a permanent replacement for the probationary position of Marlboro High School Assistant Principal. So I would expect that we will get involved with the full process of interviews and constituting a committee and all that when we get into the latter part of, mid to the latter part of January. So with the hope that we could bring a candidate to the Board of Education for consideration in February. That would be the hope, and get someone on board before we get to spring break. Also, a question was asked, if it was last board meeting or the previous board meeting, about some phones that we accessed because they were no longer of any value or use to us. We were able to donate a good number of those phones that are usable for a different agency. Actually, there's the Grace Smith House across the river in Poughkeepsie, which caters to battered women. They're actually picking up about 7 or 8 of the usable phones tomorrow. So thank you very much for the suggestion. I reached out, I found someone that could say, yes, I'll take them, and they're coming tomorrow.
And I did notice on the website that you put some up for sale.
Correct.
For, so they're good, they're nice iPhones, I think they are.
iPhone 5Cs.
Right.
Yeah.
Which are still good for the younger kids, and it gets them started, so
Yep.
it's a nice, adjustment. I hope that we can sell some of them.
We haven't got any bites yet, so that's why we're handing them off to the donation. But quite honestly, there's a lot of value in it for those people that are going to be able to use them. So
100%.
tremendous value. Yep.
100%.
Yep.
Keep them safe.
Yep.
When they need it.
Yep. And the last piece for me, we are going to be in earnest building our 2021 budget administratively in January. Rose, Sue, Smith, and myself are already beginning to work on the bones of the 2021 budget now, actually. So I'm going to just plant the seed with the Board of Education as you start to tool your mind to start thinking about what September of 2020 looks like. I'd like to get some direction from you with any budget priorities. So start thinking about that, and maybe our next board meeting, certainly I'll take any input at any time, but maybe our next board meeting we can dedicate some time to giving us some, at least, general direction on where priorities are for the Board of Education for our budget. Okay? And with that, I have nothing else.
Okay. Ulster School Board's report, moved it from the other agenda because the meeting was last week, and then the next meeting's not till January 30th, which is the legislative meeting. So it was on Thursday the 12th. The Ulster County Executive Pat Ryan was there and spoke. They're doing something a little different this year. The State of the County address is actually going to be at the Kingston High School for the students this year. He's going to do his State of the County address there. It'll obviously still be broadcast, but it's all about how do we keep young people in the county. And that's one of his big priorities, trying to figure out, talk towards that. But there may be, we may want to reach out and see if there's a way and if there's a fit for the high school to see if maybe a way to stream it in, because they're trying to get, it may be easier than trying to get students there for it, because that's obviously a big travel thing. And then the other thing that he did say that they're more than willing, he's willing to do personally, is any of our government classes, he's more than willing to come in and talk about, he's a West Point grad, did do 2 tours overseas before he went into private sector, and then came back to the public work. So, very good speaker, very much involved. Young, has has a 4-month-old, lives down at this end of the county over in Gardner. So, it was really good. And then we talked basically about legislative priorities for next year and the upcoming trip to Albany. So January's meeting, if anybody is available and would like to go, it's a real good opportunity to not have to travel to Albany to speak to our legislators, and everybody's welcome at the meeting. So it's January 30th at 6 p.m. at the Ulster BOCES office in New Paltz. You'll have not only our assemblymen and senators or their staff, but also the adjoining ones, because it's everybody that covers Ulster County gets invited. They don't all come, but it's a real good opportunity to have usually about a 2-hour meeting with them, with a bunch of questions from all the different districts, and go from there. So that was the gist of the meeting. And
So Fred, does this mean like we won't have to go to Albany in, was it,
well,
February?
we can still go to Albany in February if we want. The, you know, the lobby day in Albany, the problem with lobby day in Albany is every school district goes, and you get about that much time.
Right, the idea of Lobby Day in Albany is also to show the strength and support of all our school districts being up in Albany, and to show
And
also
it-
the governor, I mean, even though he's not really there, that we are there to fight for our students and for state aid and unfunded mandates.
And that's fine if somebody's got the ability to take the time and go, but the reality, unfortunately, there's not, we can't even, when we sit at these meetings and talk about what we want to lobby for, it's the same issues we have when we talk about this. Our needs in this district are different than the needs in the next district. You know, some of the districts in this county are very happy with where foundation aid is at, because they're at 80, 90, or 100% of foundation aid, not 56% like us.
Right.
So,
But you don't even really get a chance, because I've done this. It's basically to show our numbers and support up in Albany, but the other thing is, you don't really get that one-on-one time. You only get, like you said, a couple of minutes to state your case. But it's more just to be there for strength for each school district within New York State, because there's people from the other end, the Long Island that comes up, and normally you come in a group, like Ulster will set their kind of like guideline, and Orange Ulster sets theirs and says, this is what we want to represent for our counties.
and like I said, anybody wants to go, the lobby day will be published. It's a great opportunity. It's just a matter of, I'm a firm believer in the local lobbying that we've got going on, and the day-to-day contact with our legislators, it being the most productive way. So it's just a matter of who's got the time, and if they'd like to do it, that's great.
I guess if each school district does that also too.
Yep.
So I mean, it just, you know.
Okay. We'll move on to Student of the Month.
That's me.
Superintendent. Vacation doesn't start till after school tomorrow.
I'm thinking of the architect who was just telling us he's gonna be up all night finishing tomorrow's
To make the
submission.
submittal.
Yeah, so, okay. Sorry. Let's start with the elementary school.
I ran it. They all owe me $5. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and we're very excited at Marlborough Elementary School to introduce our Student of the Month, second grader, Miss Olivia Riley, and her amazing teacher, Miss Alicia Nanetti, who is going to tell you all about Olivia and the wonderful traits she has that has earned her this honor and recognition.
'Twas a night in December, we came to Town Hall to present Student of the Month in front of you all. Olivia Riley is the student I chose. When selecting just one, above all the others, she rose. As I began to write, I didn't know where to start. Perhaps I thought I should start with her huge heart. The girl standing before you is filled with such care. Her generous ways spread from here all the way over there. She is cooperative, responsible, and loves to help out. A model student she is, without a doubt. The list of commendable traits does not end. Compassion and kindness. She is a true friend. Let me mention another important thing. She's very conscientious, so hardworking. Before I finish, I will add one more trait. Her patience for others is incredibly great. Standing here before you, this girl does appear an amazing second grader who deserves a big cheer. This girl would make any teacher proud, and I was honored to be able to share it out loud. So now I've exclaimed, why she shines so bright. Congratulations, Olivia Riley, and everyone have a good night.
Congratulations. You're welcome. We're going to go up front.
Let's jump up to the high school.
Yep.
I like that. It's getting random. Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Good evening. We're joined tonight by freshman and outstanding student Derek Stockrocky, and Derek's going to be introduced by two teachers, Mrs. Quinn and Mrs. Sear. Congratulations, Derek. Nice job. Made a great adjustment to the high school.
Hi, I'm Megan Quinn. I'm going to start. Derek has been such an impressive addition to our English 9 class. He adds really thoughtful and intelligent ideas to the discussions we have in class. And Ms. Sear and I can always tell that he's really closely listening to and considering the ideas we talk about in class. Whenever he has a question or comment, it demonstrates really excellent critical thinking skills. And he's just an example of someone who's made a really nice transition from middle school to high school. And I'll hand it over to Ms. Sear.
Thanks, Mr. Lawler, Ms. Quinn. Oh my goodness, it's so hard to follow that. So I'm just really grateful to have the chance to come up here and recognize Derek tonight. And when I think about what I really admire about Derek is his curiosity. A lot of students come to school to show off what they already know, and Derek comes genuinely to learn and master new things. He asks questions, and he asks really thoughtful questions that show that he's looking to grow and learn. And even though he already has skills well above grade level, you write really well. And I'm not just saying that as a ninth grader. You just write really well and think about things really deeply. So for somebody who's already getting A's and clearly understanding the material, to keep pushing the edge of that so that he can push the edge of his own understanding is just really impressive. And it's really your maturity and your self-responsibility, which are unusual things to say about any teenager, let alone a ninth grader. And so I feel like for Ms. Quinn and I, we have a fairly easy job with Derek. Our job is just to give you the tools you need to learn and then get out of your way. So we're thrilled. I'm just sad I only get like one more half of a year with you.
Derek, on behalf of the Board of Education, congratulations on your very successful transition to high school.
Now, where should I go next? Middle school, yes.
Good evening, Mr. Brooks, the Board of Ed. It's my pleasure tonight to introduce our Student of the Month, who is an absolute pleasure around the building. He's a sixth grader. Every day, every morning, I see him. It's how are you, Mr. Stanmeyer? Nice to see you. Have a great day. It's utterly polite, kind. Mom and Dad, great job. You must be very proud. So this is Tegan Weckman. Welcome, and Ms. Kellogg and Mrs. Worcester are going to speak on his behalf.
So it's with great pleasure that Team Marlboro introduces Tegan as the Marlboro Middle School Student of the Month. Tegan was an easy and deserving choice for this honor. We've come up with some adjectives to describe this amazing young man. T, tenacious. Whenever an assignment is given, Tegan is the first to start and usually the first to finish. He wastes no time. E, eager. Every day he shows up with a smile on his face and ready to go. He is excited to learn regularly. He also, I will tell you, constantly is asking me, at this point, am I doing well to get into the accelerated program? So every day I'm telling him, right now you're right on track. So he really cares about his grades. He keeps pushing himself. He wants to be challenged. NG, gregarious. Tegan loves to talk, but not in a bad way. He's the type of child you could have meaningful conversations with on a multitude of topics. And I'm going to pass it over for the rest of his.
H is for helpful. He is always willing to lend a hand, whether it's for a teacher or a classmate, and there's nothing he won't do when asked. And if you don't give him something to do, he usually asks for something to do to help out. A is for appreciative. He is so grateful for everything and every experience that he has. Not a day goes by where he doesn't greet his teachers, thank them for being his teacher, and say goodbye at the end of every single class period. And N is for noble. There aren't many positive character traits that start with the letter N, but noble was a good fit. It's a social studies vocab word, so I appreciate it. He is genuinely a nice kid. He's generous, polite, honest. He just has a wonderful disposition that everyone should admire. And a little story here. My last name is Worcester, and I made a joke at the beginning of the year that, I really get down on myself about having that last name. And he was the only one that got that joke, and every day he says, good morning, good afternoon, Miss Buster, to make me feel better about that. So I always appreciate that. Tegan, all of your teachers are so extremely proud of you, and we really want to congratulate you. We had a whole team to choose from, and you are most deserving of this title, Student of the Month. So continue to work hard, and we know that you will accomplish so much in your life.
Thank you very much for coming out tonight, families and staff, to recognize these three fine students. Certainly Olivia, Derek, and Tegan represent what's the best of us. When you think about what it is to be a Duke, and you hear things like they have wonderful critical thinking skills, they're polite, they have manners, they have a huge heart, they're responsible, they're great writers, they're appreciative, they're helpful, they think about their future. These are wonderful characteristics. So families, thank you so much for sending us such great people every single day. And staff, thank you for taking the time to recognize such great people. I appreciate what you do for us every single day. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to the student representatives report.
Good evening, everyone. So on December 4th, Marlborough High School had a Pearl Harbor ceremony, and multiple veterans were thanked for their service with music, speeches, and a special thank you to Mr. Cordolano for his service fighting and in the school was given. On December 5th, Marlborough Middle School and Elementary School held the district-level spelling bee, and we would like to wish a special congratulations to the Marlborough Middle School winner, Jax Fernandez, and second place to Harrison Solomon. From the elementary school, Aluwa Fernami Mabinori was first place, and the first place winners will go on to compete in the Scripps Capital Region Spelling Bee this winter. December 6th, Dr. Mikey Fallon came to visit the Marlborough High School and Middle School, and he did an assembly on character education and accepting other students and people for their differences. December 10th, Marlborough High School held their winter concert, and we collected donations for the music scholarships, and we collected over $400, so thank you to everyone who donated. December 13th, Marlborough High School's National Honor Society held a blood drive and donated over 23 pints, and thank you to all who took the time to come and donate. December 13th through the 15th, Marlborough Middle School put on their production of Elf Jr., and it was a spectacular winter show, and good job to everyone who was in it. December 16th, Marlborough Middle School Select Chorus opened for the Rockettes Christmas Spectacular at Radio City Music Hall, and they performed holiday songs for everyone in the audience. And December 19th, on behalf of the students of the Marlborough High School and Marlborough Central School District students, we would like to thank Mr. Cordolano for his service at our school over the years, and we appreciate it, and we're so grateful for everything you have done for your students and everyone in the building. Thank you.
See, now we're going to move on to the New York State School Report Card presentation and a food service presentation. So those of you who still have to go to school in the morning bright and early, feel free.
Page up or page down, mouse click, lots of different.
Good evening. Miss Mealy and I thought you meant we would go home because we want to get up bright and early too. Thank you for this opportunity to share the report card. What you'll see tonight is a high-level look at the school district's performance. Going on behind the scenes since last June has been a real deep dive, almost a shredding of data, which has ended up with a lot of goals that we'll share with you at the end of the presentation. Tonight with me are our three principals, and they will be talking to you about the scores and the data and what we are doing going forward. I wanted to just start by sharing with you our student enrollment and where it is and where it was about 10 years ago. And there is, yes, an intentional space there, which was where the readiness program was, but we do not have any longer. So it's not that there aren't any children enrolled. We don't have that program, but just to show the enrollment. And as you can see, it's about approximately 250 less students now. Looking at the data, I thought it was important to share before we begin the enrollment by student ethnicity as well. And you can see that we've had an increase of Hispanic or Latino students by about 13%. And at the same time, we've had a deduction in our white population. So important to us because that involves teaching of new strategies to address the needs of a culturally diverse classroom. The American Indian, they did not report this year, so that's the reason why it's not there. Okay? So I'm going to start with Ms. Walsh and Ms. Clinton at the same time. So they're going to go back and forth between the 3-5 and the 6-8 for ELA and math. Okay, and they'll speak to the graphs that we have there.
Thank you, Mrs. Hecht. As you can see from the slides, we're looking at the light blue line to look at the trend line, and you can see that there is a gradual, steady upward trajectory. And we want you to know that we are taking very close note of the data. We have balanced literacy workshops that are done in-house. Those take place all the time. So they take place across the grade level, and they also take place between grade levels on half-day professional development days and full-day professional development days. So we ensure that we are aligned vertically as well as horizontally with our instruction in ELA.
What Patty said. Just kidding. She did it so well, though, and many of the things are very similar. We're also happy to report that in grades 6, 7, and 8, our trend lines are moving in a positive direction. We continue to yearly analyze all of the data. Our departments have set goals based on the data. They evaluate the results based on whatever information has been released from the state, and they focus on making sure that the transitions between 5th to 6th, then 6th to 7th, and 7th to 8th are clear, and they can address the areas for students who may not do well the year before to look for ways to increase growth and performance. So again, we are laser focused on the analysis of the data that is provided, and we use that in the classroom, the way we implement the curriculum. Back to Patty.
I should have brought glasses, but our trend lines in math also are on a steady upward trajectory. Our math coaching is taking place. We use a coach this year from BOCES, and her name is Elvira Scotto. She's been working closely with our teachers continually. We have monthly visits from her and professional development with her in order to ensure that not only is our math instruction fine-tuned, but also that our math instruction is aligned with the next generation math standards that are out. So she works closely with the teachers, and the teachers in turn are turnkeying that, aligning and realigning their curriculum maps, which are living documents, but certainly need adjustments when new standards are given down by the state.
With the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade math, we see some upward mobility both in 6th and 7th grade. We continue to look at the trend line for 8th grade is going down, but if you do notice the upward motion of the actual performance level on grades for 8th grade with 3s and 4s. I just want to mention, I mention it every year, the 8th grade has our highest refusal rates, so sometimes that data set is not as well of as good of an indicator as we would get from the 6th and 7th grade, but we're still really happy to report that there was a marked improvement from last year, from 2017 to 2018 to 2019. So we do want to recognize that. The math department at the middle school loves data. They analyze every question. They, in particular, one of the workshops that they attended at OU BOCES for 7th grade math, it worked out that our math teacher was the only teacher to attend. So it was like a personal opportunity to really dig down into her data specifically, but to look at the school's data as well. And she turnkeyed that back to the rest of the department. So we're really proud of the work that they're doing. We also have looked at implementing, we actually made a change with our AIS to continue to look towards improvement. And we are doing push-in AIS for 7th grade as a pilot. We use the opportunity with the Essential Elements schools to watch to really evaluate all of our programs and look at best practices. We're also looping some of our students more than ever, which is really one of the #1 indicators of student success. So we're hoping that you'll continue to see those trend lines moving in the same direction for next year.
Deb, could you explain a little bit more about push-in AIS?
Sure. So,
And looping as well.
okay. So with the push-in, we have two models where with AIS we have some students go out and in addition to their math period, they have an additional period every other day for math and they get additional supports by a math teacher. One of the things that we wanted to try this year, and it came from the teachers themselves as looking at some new strategies, and we analyzed some other programs around the state that have very good results, and is allowing two math teachers to go into the classroom. So you have your regular math teacher, if you will, and then an AIS math teacher also pushing in so they can service the students who have individual needs with the additional supports in the room, but then also help all of the students who may be struggling with a particular concept. So we're looking forward to seeing what those results are like. So the experience itself in general, though, both of the math teachers are very pleased with it. They feel it's really supporting the students in the classroom setting. With looping, we have a 7th and 8th grade team, but what we did is we took all of our 7th graders last year and we kept them on the same team for 8th grade. So we also made an adjustment where both of our 7th grade math teachers are teaching accelerated, keeping the accelerated options on both teams to allow for that to continue. So we're looking at looping. The only area where it doesn't necessarily correlate at this point is with the algebra students. But again, those aren't really showing in your math grade 8 anyway because they do not take the math 8th grade exam.
So how are we doing on opt-out rate and participation rates? You guys didn't mention that really for elementary or middle. Are we better? Are we still in the 30% opt-out rate? Where we stand?
So Patty is going to tell you that her numbers are substantially better 3 through 5. We have a trend in 6th and 7th grade where they are better than they have been in the past, with 6th grade being the strongest. However, by the time they get to Math 8, it's the second exam of the series, as you know, and it has the largest number. So we were about 50% last year with the refusal rates for 8th grade. So we're hoping, with the lower numbers, grades 3, 4, 5, and even now 6 and 7, that will continue. So we'll actually have the best possible data indicators with more students participating in the exam for 8th grade as well.
So the only question I have with the chart, so when you say math grade 8, and we're looking at 23%, last year it was 6. Now is this following, when you say the 18 numbers were at 6%, is it the same cohort of students last year or last year's 8th graders?
These are last year's 8th graders. So the ones that you see for 2018 are your current 10th graders. The ones you see for 2019 are your current 9th graders. So they are different students. So it is not following a cohort, but we're just looking at the instruction and meeting the standards.
So this year, 23% of the math 8th graders made the 3 or 4s. That same group, per se, when they were in 7th grade, were at 35%. And then they were at 38% the year before that. So that specific group is really trending down, the current 8th graders.
So they would have been 38, 35, and then 23. But again, your refusal rates really do throw an indicator. Plus also note that your algebra students would be potentially your 6th graders who took the test, your 7th graders who took the test, but then didn't take them in 8th grade.
That's why I hate this state testing. It doesn't
So, and it is just really important to recognize that piece in math because I think it does skew some of the information when you look at the 8th grade. I think it's good to look at trends 3 through 7 and then take it for what it's worth for the 8th grade because you still get value out of it. There's definitely still data that we can, extract from it, and we do use that data, but it is a little bit off when you look at the 8th grade. So we want to add in the algebra students and really kind of look at how they continue in the upward mobility of math when they get to high school at some of those other courses they can take.
I guess the big problem is it's not tracking a group of students through the process. We're looking at the same grade level each year compared to a whole different group of students the year before, which is, it's just not, it's just, never mind.
Right, and that's what the state does. That's not what we do.
Well, I know.
Right.
I know this is not our idea.
That cohort, and then we drill down.
Right.
So we'll look at, say,
Right.
last year's do well at. And then we take those standards and then we begin to look at our curriculum and address that. So we use this to see how well we're doing because the state test is supposed to be matched to the standard. So we do look at that material, but it's not the only measure that we look at. So for instance, the elementary in math, maybe there was 2.1% opt-out. But if you went to 8th grade now, we're at a 45 to 50% opt-out. So it's hard to gain, So now we're looking at the subgroups within that who did take it and look at how they're doing in that if they're taking the test. So we are using the data for what's there.
So I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
On December, I think 5th, 6th, the state released its measurements and progress reports. I was wondering how we did. Are we in good standing, or we are? And so there's no. Oh, that's great. That tells a lot more than this, because it is true with the data and the way, because the other thing you have to look at, and a lot of people don't look at, is the p-value from year to year with the tests. They fluctuate up and down, and it looks like it's the students that fluctuate up and down, and in reality, as a psychometrician, it's the test itself, because it's very hard to do a same p-value per test. So there are years that the tests are easier than others, and it looks like, or harder than others, and it looks like the students aren't doing as well, and in reality, the test is much harder.
And we were just at the middle level schools, and they had a whole presentation on it, and they were talking to us, and they said the one way to raise your p-value is get more kids to take the test.
Right.
And that was their number one.
In p-value, I tend to like the n-value. The higher the n-value, the more accurate it is. So rather than a district, I'd rather look at the state p-value, and some haven't even been released yet for this school year. So when you look at that, it actually gives you a good feel. So, the higher the p-value, the easier the question. The lower the p-value, the harder the question. So when you have a p-value of, for a test for a 3.4 for the year, and then the following year it's a p-value of, say, 6.0, there's a big difference, and the tests are much easier than one year and other. So sometimes it's good to look at that as well,
Well, the
other
rest
than
of
the
us
questions.
are so underwater in this conversation.
I'm sorry. Right, and then there's a standard deviation as well. But p-value is basically the number of kids that got the question wrong. And a p-value always has to fall between a 0 and a 1.0. And when you look at the number of kids in the state, so if you have a p-value of 0.9, that means 90% of the kids in the state got that p-value correct. Where if you look at a p-value if you look at a p-value of 3.0, it means only 30% of the kids got that question correct. So as a person that does this every day, one of the things I always look at is it the question on the test if only 30% of the kids get it wrong? Because these are made by human beings, and they do make errors, even though they're professional question makers and designers. Was it taught? Was it presented in a way that the kids are not used to? For example, sometimes they'll put things like, they'll talk about square pizzas and round brownies. And in most kids' life, unless you're in Rochester, they think of round pizzas and square brownies, so that totally throws off their schemata or mental thinking processes. So when you look at that, then that throws another step into the equation of something that might be 2, 3, or 4 processes long. It makes it 5. So it really eliminates what kids can do the problem correctly, and if they're even going to be able to figure out how to do it.
Sounds like we need to go to just local testing.
Well, and I guess that's a question.
That was,
Do we report? But I guess that's the question is, do we take, and I know we talked about this, John, I think last year, the year before, when we got into these numbers, when we talk about, and at the high school it's different because we're using grades, averages, where are we still using 1, 2, 3. But do we track that? The students, the average of this class this year is a 3.75 compared to a 3 last year. As a group, do we see progress in those students moving through the program, improving, or are they, at a steady level?
Well, and even where is the progress? Is it in a standard? Is it in a rigor? Is it in the logic and the process of them thinking? There's so many ways that you can measure these
Yeah, but
kids.
I'm just saying in grades. The thing every quarter, we send out grades. Correct. In those grades, do we track that group from beginning to end that we can see a trend? Because a trend line of what our students in each grade are doing, rather, because this is all.
We pulled that data set last year out of actually the Rick did for us out of school tool, and it did show some trending. So if we step it up to a higher level view, and everyone here has heard, and I'll repeat it again for the purpose of repeating it. Every day I try to push our group every single day in every decision that we make to design and support programs that help students progress towards the highest level diploma they can achieve, with the highest GPA that they can achieve, with the most diverse course list on that transcript. So if the whole system continues to hear that and work towards that same trajectory, then every decision, every meeting, every purpose, every training is also slowly but surely affecting that pencil point. Because if you can take steps to affect the moment when that child clicks that button on a Chromebook or whatever they're doing, those are the moments that take that child one step closer to that higher level, whatever it is for that child. So if these folks were to give you what probably would be 90-page presentation of the detailed data set, then you'd start to see, and maybe we can start to share some pictures even as you start to see your teachers in these workshops, or when you see your teachers in these workshops, because a picture tells 1,000 stories. The folks are really digging deep, and our leadership team is really pushing on that point. It's not just a passive experience to say, yeah, we looked at our results, our kids did this, and now we start to teach again. Well, it's a much more detailed look at that because of what this group up at the dais expects and what these folks have come to truly internalize as the goal.
Well, what they do too here, and I do applaud Robin, because one of the things she does is she triangulates the data and she uses multiple measures. So she has the STAR, which they test all the kids, which gives them a national norm to see where our kids rank. Then we have the state, where we can see where we rank in New York, and then we do have our report cards, which is the calibration.
There's also more localized assessments too that they reinstituted. So
this is which is great, and it gives you a full picture, not just a one snapshot in time of what the kid can do. And of course, you're going to have those kids that are all over the place, like mine, but most of them are pretty steady, and you can see. But there are those kids that, their mood, especially middle school, determines how they test that day.
I know one of the models that this group would benefit from, the state attempted to put it together, and it just really doesn't exist. And it's almost like a bar graph of progress, where you could see graduation being the ultimate place and kindergarten being a starting point, and slowly but surely that cup gets filled with progress. And if you think about things that you have to do to meet that graduation stage, there are those moments, but it doesn't fit neatly into a graphic. So everybody's path is so diverse and so different that what the state had a vision on, and there is a data set in there, but it's very clunky and very individualized for a student. So when we look at it from a district perspective, those individualized student progress graphs, really, it doesn't really translate into, so how's the student body doing? It doesn't. So that's why we look at marking period grades. We look at, I look at the data sets that Deb pours through, Patty pours through, Robin pours through, and step away because of P's and N's, and it is happening.
Well, and I mean, personally, that's important for you and the staff all understanding you're teaching the right things the right way to get the right results so that they all can do the best they can. I personally, in 7 years, don't think it means diddly to us here when you look, because the numbers do all these crazy things and just, they've either changed the test, changed the way to doing it, but if you could see the student body, maybe it's the you know, top third, middle third, bottom third, how did they trend beginning to end? You know, where are they at along that path? Because the reality of it is, you're going to have some students are going to be in the top third, some are going to be in the bottom third, some are going to be in that middle third. Right. Is that group, you know, that those overachievers, are they all shooting to the stars? And you see that obviously in a high school, because it's a weighted GPA, it's easier to see. I'm sure it's probably more complex at the middle school and the elementary school to get that early years. But there's got to be a mathematical way to chart the 12th grade's progress, the 11th grade progress from beginning to end on a 1/3. Because I don't know, I'm asking the rest of you, is that just seemed like that would make more sense from us to see, are we heading in the right direction, or are we heading down, or we just got this whole flat thing? Because the rest of this just...
Yeah.
There's tools too that are
I'm going to
coming
get
out.
in here eventually.
Go ahead.
So this is what I do for a living. Thank you for putting this data together. Two things, two questions. Number one, the looping. Is this the first year that you're doing the looping? And is it just with 7th to 8th?
Yes.
Okay. I think you're going to find, like I'm looking at the data, like you have 32% ones from 2018 and 28% twos. I think you're going to find with the looping, because I've been looping for a number of years, that the ones a lot of the ones will turn into twos. Because when you hit the ground running September with a bunch of kids you've already had for 180 days, it's so much easier to make gains. And what's even another side benefit that a lot of people that just look at numbers don't understand when they're like with the kids in the classroom about looping is that when you get to the end of the school year, you already start teaching for the next year. So you're kind of already a unit or so ahead when you get involved in September. So looping is very powerful, and I wish more school districts would do it. I've been doing it for 6 years, and it's really, I don't have any ones. I don't want to sound, conceited, but I don't have any ones anymore because they're already ready for 8th grade when I get them in 8th grade. Number two, the push-in. How often is that happening, and is that happening in every class? Because that's another powerful tool to get your ones to your twos and your twos to your threes, because you can separate out by ability and do a lot of two teaching things at the same time in the classroom.
So both of those things really, if I'm completely transparent, came as a result of us through the essential elements as we were going through that process, and we were really digging into what we wanted to try to make some changes. So both of those things are things that we're piloting this year for the first time. And with the push-in for AIS, we started off with 2 teachers who were 100% willing. So our 7th grade green team, if you will, is all push-in.
Okay.
And
so essentially they have 2 every day?
So that teacher goes in every other day, but they can plan accordingly. So there are 2 areas that we wanted to look at. What are the schools that are really doing exceptionally well, and steal good ideas and pilot them, and hopefully we can continue to grow those. So they're both things that we just started for this year.
They're both powerful, and when you're talking math, they really help move numbers because you get a lot more specialized education for students. A lot of students get lost in a classroom because if you've ever been in a math classroom, 2 or 3 kids try to answer all the questions and the other 25 will go to sleep. So when you hold the other 25 accountable, when you can split them up amongst the 2 groups, it's a very powerful tool. I'd love to talk to you guys about it. Beyond this, if you ever want any advice about this, because I've been doing this for a long time, and it's the only thing, when I look at data, I only look at 1s and 2s because the 3s and 4s are always going to be okay. They always live there, and I'm always trying to figure out how to get the 1s and 2s out, and looping and push-in with AIS is very powerful.
So I just want to also note with the 6th grade to 7th grade for math, for the DCT class and for special class, we also loop that teacher up.
Okay.
So that's another area, again, we're hoping for the students with IEPs, we'll hope to see some growth there.
And also behaviorally, side note, when you're used to kids, they don't bother you as much the second year. You have a lot less behavioral issues.
Right.
Trust me. Trust me.
It's no. I think if that red team were here, they would say that they would 100% agree with that.
And my last question, you had big groups drop in 8th grade not. Are we assessing them differently so we still know what they're doing if they're not taking the state test?
The students that
Like the kids, you said there's
Yeah.
a big percentage that are
Yeah,
opting out.
100%. So of course everyone takes STAR, so that's one area, but they also have common benchmarks and a final exam that they work on some articulation to make sure that the ninth grade teachers are receiving a data set that's meaningful to them. So we actually made an adjustment on the final this year through those conversations. So, and throughout the year there are common benchmark assessments.
Thank you.
I think it's also important to note, like at the AIS, at the elementary building, we've been looping 3 years? I think. 3 years. So they move with their students. So again, that non-loss of time. Then there's a lot of articulation right now going on with the department chairs in special education, diving into that data, looking at it, looking for strategies to move those 2s into 3s as well. So there's a lot of work going on. And, you know, Mike alluded to a 60-page presentation. This presentation, just for conversation with the administration level, is over 60 pages long. You're getting, you know, the state report, but you're not seeing all of the other work that, looking at the cohorts and looking at all the subgroups and looking at the different classrooms, seeing where we need to help our teachers. And what we've been doing, starting at the elementary school, is sending our team of teachers to learn about the new standards. So not just one person going out, but 6 people going out, and then moving from that model, the coaches coming in and meeting with the 6 teachers.
That's another question I want to ask Ms. Walsh. The coaches coming in, you're asking, you have a specific plan for what you want when the coach comes in? Because to me, in my career, that's been so beneficial when we tell the coach what we want, rather than when administration tells the coach what they want, because it's 2 different things. And then you start getting conflicting advice in a classroom, and it actually does not help the kids. So if we're telling the coaches what we want, it's a great thing.
We are definitely doing that. So as Mrs. Heck just said, last year the teachers went out to BOCES to have trainings as a cohort per grade level. This year, the trainer comes to us once a month, and the teachers have helped to create the agenda for what they want to work on. So they're working on different things, but also making sure that they're aligned, and we are certainly overseeing it to make sure that maps are current. And there's one common thread in all of them.
So you're looking at your weaknesses and saying, we want a coach to help us with these, and you're bringing the coach in.
Yes.
That's really what I'm asking, because I've seen it work the other way, and it becomes more of a hassle than it has.
It's funny you should say that, because the first coaching session in September, we were letting her lead it, and that wasn't as valuable to the teachers. They came back and said, we really wanted to work on this, so we heard what they said, and we created the agenda going forward based on that for the rest of the year.
It's encouraging to hear.
It's also a living document. So if they say after the next one, well, now we want to change and, you know, tighten up in another area, then we can do that as well. So certainly it is.
I want to go back to Frank's point, and I brought this point out pretty much every year I've seen these. We every year look at state tests only. We acknowledge the many, many variables that go into it that change every year: standards, test time, computer testing versus not that, opt-out rate, all that stuff. And then you always back it up with what I believe is true, 90-plus charts of detailed data and deep dive, but yet we never see any of that in a report card. Now, I understand you have to report this, and it's a state requirement. I got it. But, and Frank was starting to suggest some things there too. Is there anything out of those 90-plus charts that can be condensed into some high points or some trend indicators that say, look, this is a supplement to the report card?
That's what we got, John. That's it.
This is state information still, right?
Yes.
What do you mean this is it? I'm talking about outside of state data, like from the 90-plus charts and the grouping and the cohorting. I don't want to say
You're asking to come up with some kind of growth model.
I don't know what it is, but there has to be something that indicates all the work you're doing that supports the positive message that you send every year, but we don't see it, where it's like all out of faith, which is fine. But I mean, that's where Frank was going. How do you show some progress without that? Because that is got its own explanation, but it is limited because of just the number of variables. And the variables continues. Last year, the foundational standards changed. They're going to change again. So even the Commissioner of Education said, don't compare. Because
Which one?
It's changed. Aaliyah, the one that left. The one that left. Recommended. So we already got that. We don't have to talk about it. So I guess
we could certainly try to put together some additional charts. We have to be very cautious, though, because as we start getting down to next layers, we start getting into personally identifiable information. So it's just a piece that we have to be cautious of, because there's not a very big leap from this to that student's score. And
Yeah,
it's just a piece that we have to
but-
watch.
But if we boiled this down to, in reality, one chart per grade level showing, and some grade levels are going to be shorter, where the top third's at, what their trend, the middle trend, and the bottom trend is.
We're not singling out,
that
no.
I think that would mean
High.
something to us. We can post this on the district website, and anybody wants to go look at it, can look at it. Because, like I said, after 8 years of looking at it, I have no idea what the hell it means. I'm not an educator. I'm not, you know.
I respect everything what you're saying. We will do our best to try to come up with that thing. I'm saying that it's not that we have not heard you.
Yeah.
That data set that was volumes of data last year, which was based on the marking periods, really didn't point out anything significantly different than what you're seeing on the trend line, which is why when I created these charts, I added the trend line in, because you'll get sawtoothing year to year.
Right.
But is the trend up or is it down? That's the broader progress piece. And you can certainly expand or narrow your data set to change that trend line. So I look at it over the longitude.
But all that's telling you is that trend line when they were in that class.
Correct.
It's not trending.
The longitudinal approach is a different approach, and we certainly can look at creating some charts from a longitudinal perspective. So how did they perform when they were in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, the same cohort?
Overall. I'm not saying by subject.
Right.
I'm saying by overall. So we go to biggest, highest level picture, so we don't get to what the
I think
students
Robin
say.
here's the challenge.
Yeah, I
So,
hear it.
Frank, what you're talking about is from,
And I'm really geeky with data, so.
so basically it would be all the kindergartners to go to the first grade, 2nd grade, and so far, and then follow them all the way up. Is
Like
that correct?
Susie just said,
Right.
you start with the, the class of 2020 would be 13, 13 point marks. Now, granted, we know kids are going to come and go.
Right.
That's their foundation.
Right.
And then you do one of those for each. Like I said, this is great, and it's great for what
And
you
we're
all have to,
required to.
and require, it's got to be published. Well, the state said it's here. We put it on a website, it's published. You guys say it's there, we accept it, and it goes on the thing. And we can actually look at something that's based on our local testing. Sure.
Well,
Which
also,
is what we give to students, which what every
Right.
college looks at.
And we do something similar, like for each teacher, I create a multiple measures chart. So they get last year's score, and that, like they get like 3 years scores back with STAR and with ELA. So the teacher gets their class, so they see where that child is going. So they get their FMP score, and they can add anything else on there that helps them determine, what they want to know about that child. So we do that internally for about 3 years of that child. But we also do it with our FMP scores, with our reading assessment. That follows the child right through. So we also have that documented, so.
it might
So
also
we can
be
create
Why don't we
easier
give
to
like
Robin
that.
some time to churn on some reports and charts that I think will address, she hears you. I think she hears you loud and clear on what she can start to gather and pull together and
Look at and.
look at.
It might also, too, be easier to look at it like a bell-shaped curve, because when we look at these, everybody's like, oh, we want the kids up 90, 100, but it's not really realistic when you look at a bell-shaped curve to have all the kids 90, 100. And if you look at these scores on a bell-shaped curve, we're really good. So it might be a mindset of thinking of how the scores are presented rather than a 0 to 100, 100 being the best. Think of it as a bell-shaped curve where 50 is the average, 75 is really high, 34 the lower end, and your kids, as long as they're falling in that bell-shaped curve, the 34 to the 75, you're actually doing pretty good. So I mean, that's another way to look at it too, because
I
you're
think we
never
can-
ever, no matter where you're at, going to get every kid getting up 90, 100%.
I don't think anybody expects that. We all know
Yeah.
you're going to have that. Every class has got that.
But where are we in the world, so to
Yeah.
speak? So I think that we can come up with that. Well, there's the challenge. Let's come up with something that can graphically represent on a full data set where our kids are by grade level. So let's see what we can come up with.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just because, like I said, we got to have this. We got to publish it.
When I mean, a disclaimer, I try to pull myself back from this, but I just can't. When the state 3.8 tests were predictors of future success on the corresponding regents, so prior to 2012, so that's when you saw the scores where 80, 90, 95% of the kids were getting 3s and 4s. The tests were designed so that they were predictors of success on the corresponding regents exam. So if you took the 3rd grade ELA and you got a 3, that probably would correlate to you getting somewhere between a 65 and an 84 on the corresponding regents when you eventually took it. 4th grade test, 5th grade test, 6th grade. So you could use it as a trajectory towards that goal. These 3.8 tests do not do that. They individually stand alone for that grade level. So it's a completely different type of assessment. So the old type of assessment that maybe I'm a little older school for it, but it was a better representation of exactly what you're asking for, plus there was no such thing as opting out.
Well, those poor 8th graders are in for a rude awakening next year, because there's no opting out once you get to the high school either.
But then it was a full data set, and we could give that longitudinal filling up of the cup experience to see how many kids were on grade progressing towards success on the regents.
New is not always better.
So,
But point on the 8th graders, though, Frank, those 8th graders, some of them were honors students and still had to take the state test. Like if you're in honors algebra, you still had to take the state test, correct?
No, they only take one. They would take, if they're taking algebra, they don't take the 8th grade math assessment.
Is that true? Is it not true for other honors classes like ELA?
Well, in 8th, we don't have an honors ELA, but for, you're thinking of biology, so because the bio students do take the science one, because they really are two different types of tests, so they were taking it, so they have that performance piece, yes.
Okay, I thought it was math.
Yep.
Okay.
So those students that took the algebra are not in the
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was mixing it up with the science.
They would have helped the numbers.
But why I ask, because I had a direct conversation with my own daughter on that. I've got to take the biology regents. I need an 85 or better. Why do I got to waste my time on the state test? And I said, you have to take it, blah, blah, blah. I tried to explain it. Without talking to her, I know where she didn't spend any time worrying about the state tests, and it probably got reflected, right? That's why, I mean, that's only science, so I guess that's not the point of math. And I think also what's happening as kids get older, they acknowledge more and more it doesn't matter in terms of their grade, at least in middle school, and they just go in with a don't care attitude, and that is one of 10 variables, but that's a big one because they're not studying, they're not looking, and the parents aren't even pushing them.
Well, that's why I would rather see something that's actually tracking our internal grading system, because the reality of it is, that's what we put out at the end to every college or anybody that's asking. All that information of what we have as a district comes at that end point, based on what's available.
We're all saying the same thing now, yeah.
Yeah.
We're ready for science? Yes. So these are the science results for last year only. And as you can see in grade 4, we are above the state level. So the district is in blue and the state is in yellow on the chart. And we are above the state level in proficiency in 4th grade. And we've been very successful, and in 8th as well. But we've been very successful with this. And we're never content just to accept status quo and to keep it that way, even though we've been very successful each year in our science results. We just purchased, you just purchased a new science texts, not textbooks, but actual literature that the students are using, nonfiction literature, to support science across the content area, so that they are using this in 4th and 5th grade along with their reading instruction. And that helps with the hands-on components that they are doing in class always at elementary school also. Thanks.
So again, as Patty stated, the 8th grade science is also, the proficiency level for the district is higher than the state, and that was done through a lot of hard work on behalf of the science department. And don't get too comfortable with those grade 4 science results, because pretty soon it's going to become grade 5 science tests, because those standards are changing and the years they're taking the tests are also changing. So, Patty, you want to go first? No, go ahead. Okay. So also just a lot of work in particular in the area of science. So that grade 8 test does really represent 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade material. And a lot of work and data analysis has gone on with the science department. They've reviewed all of their curriculum maps, have made some adjustments of the maps. And just like the math department at the middle school, science loves their data and they love to analyze it. And they are continuing to work. So even though as a district, as I showed you in the last slide, we outperformed the state level. The department still wants to do better, and they're continuing. Again, if you look, although that trend line does go down, if you look at those last 3 years where a lot of work has gone on within the department on the curriculum, we're seeing some upward mobility, and we're hoping to continue in that way. But I do want to just kind of point out what John mentioned. As with math, sometimes we do have those students who either are test refusals also for science, even though it's the same test has been for probably 2 decades at this point. But we do have more participation than we do with the math. No, the quick answer is no. We sometimes have a couple of parents who look towards refusals, and we kind of explain why that doesn't really make sense, because it really does look at their own child's individual growth, and so we're usually able to, move that conversation along. So I'm going to say no. All right, Patty and I are going to go away now. So are there any last questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. You have to kind of make it light sometimes. So, all right. This doesn't. I'm skipping ahead. There we go. Mr. Lawler's turn.
Okay, good evening again. So in general, we go through an extensive process of ripping apart Regents exams at the end of the testing period. That's usually in June. The exception is January for English. That's when all of our 11th grade students take the English Regents. And so there's a real discussion about where we had strengths and weaknesses, and then a lot of goal setting happens from that point. That's actually a process that goes on for months. We had departments working still on goals in September and October, and even still revising them at this point as they go through instructional points with students. Looking at the English results over the years, there's been a consistent real improvement in the mastery. The mastery is going to be that red line in the bottom, whereas the passing score is in the blue area, which has really been a story of consistency. This one.
This one?
Button in my head. Oh my God. Okay. I got it, Rob.
There we go. Okay.
All right, so math. Math is 3 exams that we have. So we've got algebra, geometry, and algebra 2. There have been new exams, and I want to highlight one area of growth you're going to see in the geometry. That's the slide in the upper right. It's important to remember, we talk about what we learn from the exams and where we are in the process of an exam, and you're asking questions about, we improve. How do we improve? When do we improve? Looking at that geometry, we had a time when we really focused on the instruction, and you're seeing now that line is trended back upward in both mastery and passing. Algebra 2, same thing. That was a new exam, so there were new exams phased in for all 3 tests. For our science Regents exams, it's really a story of consistency with living environment, which is also called the biology Regents, and earth science. Physics is an area that has grown in the number of students taking that test and enrolling in the program over the years. In addition to, you see that mastery has gone up. And chemistry, I'm going to highlight as an area of focus this year, where we really looked at our chemistry results, both for passing and mastery, to make adjustments to the instruction that's happening for students. So that's been an area of intense debate as you look at those results, to make sure that we're moving in the right direction for chemistry. There's been a dramatic focus on the short answer questions in chemistry, in particular in both recall areas and also in looking at graphs and tables and then interpreting that data, and to be able to answer those higher level questions, the short answer questions. Short answer questions are worth approximately 40% of the assessment.
But it doesn't help that when they do their grading, that they do their whole curve, and if depending on where you're at, you get downgraded. I had to listen to that the one year, Jesus. The math doesn't add up.
Right, and there's conversion charts, if that's what you're referring to. So in terms of looking at social studies, there are actually 2 new Regents exams coming in social studies. We're going to be taking what's called the new framework exam in global studies this June. That's been a new instructional approach to grades 6 to 12. We've got vertical alignment on that approach, and lots of work professionally between the 2 schools to make sure that our students are learning for that new approach. So we have a new exam for global studies this year. The following year, in June of 2021, we'll be phasing in the new framework United States History and Government Regents exam as well. So graduation rate, this is actually the most important perspective for me when I look at both you see the blue line would be our rate of graduation. We do not have the data yet. The final data we expect it to be very consistent with last year's final numbers. In addition to that red line is advanced diploma percentage. If you look historically, our district has made a tremendous growth in advanced diploma percentage over the years.
Hopefully the 2019 number will be out in January or February. I emailed the person that produced this chart. Certainly the kids did graduate in June.
And that's the only data that counts. So
well, if you think about a corporation's bottom line, our bottom line is our graduation rates. So this really is the bottom line. So these are the culmination of that pull up the hill, so to speak. From an accountability perspective, if you don't get a Regents diploma, you don't count as a graduate from a state and a national report card perspective. But there's a good number of our students in our high school self-contained that do go on to get local and Regents diplomas. So, but it's from an accountability perspective, they don't count as graduates.
So whereas when you're looking at this number and you're seeing, percentage-wise, there's those few kids that should be graduating that aren't, because of that, actually counts against your overall number. Okay, right.
Theoretically, right. But I don't know the number off the hand. Do you know how many kids that didn't? We might have the number, but
last year though. That's the good.
All right. It was a very,
it's
That's what Val said.
very small number, right?
Yeah, but when you're only talking a class of 140 or 150, 2's a lot.
Right. From a tiered perspective also, I think I've produced the numbers for this group, and I certainly can do it again, but you talked about top third, middle third, bottom third. The top tier performers in the region, as far as Regents graduation rates, are in the 91 to 98 range. Those are there's a pretty big separation after you get below 91, 92 to the next tier of graduation performers as a district. Then you get a solid group in the 80s, and then certainly some below that in the 70s. So when your performance is 90, 91 or higher, and certainly as you start getting into where we are, last year was 94%, you're in top tier performance. So that's, if you think about a bottom line for a corporation, that's where we are. I look at that as a tremendous effort by our system. Because if we're seeing children that are either opting out, not taking, or taking and not performing extraordinarily well on those 3-8 assessments, but then really kicking it in when the 9th grade tests hit, the 10th grade tests, and certainly when graduation comes in, something happens through that churn over those years where kids perform. And that's the magic of people working hard. I mean, if all of our kids were top performing students on the 3-8s, wonderful. And they're also graduating out with 94% of their kids getting the Regents diploma, who worked harder?
Well, and the
Our kids worked harder to get to that level.
And the graduation rate's even higher, because this is the four-year graduation rate, right, correct? Because there's also kids that go 5 years and 6 years, which even bring it up higher.
This is a 4-year graduation rate, yep.
That's correct.
So my question is, what happens to the kids that don't? What, do they just drop out? I'm kind of a little.
I mean, that's a different answer for every student. And it's actually, you talked earlier about, you start to actually identify individual people when you start to discuss situations. But I would say, I look at it differently than the numbers. I always ask myself as we go through this process, it's a significant process working with seniors for the entire year for various reasons. And we work with them over the course of the years that they're in school. But I always ask myself, is our system, is our school, our folks doing everything possible to support our students? And I have been able to answer that question, yes, since I've gotten here. I've really been impressed with the work we do with students. I think we are a model for how you help students. We're incredibly creative in trying to find alternative ways for students to get through and to support them. We're very good at it. So for me, I know that question, you know, and so we look at all these slides, to me, that's the big thing that I'm worried about.
And I get that, and I guess I'm always looking at the underdog. And how can we help them better? And how can we get them to get up over that fence? And
Right.
maybe
Well, there's
get a
underdogs walking
99%
across the
rate.
stage. That's in the blue area. When you graduate 94%, you're getting the underdogs, the overdogs, and everybody in the middle.
Yeah,
So-
and it's not meaning that a lot of those people aren't graduating. They're not graduating in 4 years, so the state doesn't count that.
Do you remember, I don't think it was last year, it was the previous year, we had the ceremony in the fall for the August graduate, a little
Yep.
mini ceremony in here? Yeah.
Yep.
We're doing good.
Very good.
I still like to see our graduation go up higher.
So we just wanted to wrap it up with some of the conversations we were having with you, just to let you know that with our conversations with administration and with our teachers, these are where our focus is right here. So we are analyzing, as you heard, the data to inform our instruction. We are identifying the students that have challenges. We are also looking at our teachers and helping them if they have challenges with new standards and new strategies and students, you know, that need more support. We are realigning our maps. We have next-gen new standards. John, I'm sure you know. Math, ELA, science, PE, art, mental health, and we just got another set of, you know, guidance memos to look at again. So there's a lot of work going on, and we're doing it very quickly. And I have to, you know, just commend our teachers. This year we were just marveling at the way that they were having data conversations. It's just, I don't know, I like it when somebody grabs me and starts the conversation with me. And instead of me, I feel like I'm hounding them. So I felt that this year, that's really taking off. So I really think our teachers value the work, and they absolutely love their students.
Go ahead. I just have to commend our teachers also, because they have embraced it. And the state does go through lots of changes. Every time we start getting to the point where we're like, okay, they decide to come in and tighten up the wrench and throw something else at them.
Our new technology standards.
Our teachers step up to the plate, I have to be
Thank
honest.
you.
And,
Yeah.
I mean, no one likes change, but they do embrace it, and they do go forward.
Thank
It just
you.
makes it hard, because to me, these really aren't numbers, because they keep changing everything. And our students have to relearn some things, and sometimes it's a math class, like you said, is now going to be taught in a 5th grade, or science, and, you know, that was being taught in an 8th grade class.
And as Ms. Clinton did mention, like the 4th grade science test is a test on 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade standards. So, and then 8th grade is 6, 7, and 8. So it's not just what they've learned first couple of months they've been in school. So that's challenging in itself, and they do very well.
I'm glad you guys are looking at the whole child, too. I think that as an educational community and as a team, you've done a great job with this. And when I see the social emotional, I get excited over that, too, because if we look at the media right now, suicide rates between 10 and 14-year-olds is at an all-time high in our nation, and it's really scary when we look at the numbers. So I'm really glad we're looking at that whole child, especially the social emotional.
I know that they've got a couple more slides that they want to run through, but I want to give you a phrase that I challenged our group with actually on December 11th. Each time we have a superintendent's council meeting, I try to put a theme at the top. And you know the three questions that I constantly am hounding: how do we, are we teaching the right things? Are we teaching the right things well? And how do you know? That key piece of how do you know is more important than the answers to the two questions. But I asked the question a little bit differently in our last meeting, really focusing in on that academic, emotional, social, and physical well piece. Academic, emotional, social, and physical. So I asked simply the question to them: does your system, or do we know who is and who isn't doing well in our schools? And how do you know? And doing well means academically, emotionally, socially, physically. Do we know who's doing well and who's not? And are we providing the appropriate supports so that the people that are doing well can continue to do well, and those that are not get the supports they need? But more importantly, don't just tell me, yes, we do. How do you know? So that's something that we will absolutely be coming back to as they explore, how do I know that we're doing the right thing for the people that need the right thing? And it's not just children. We also have to look at now, in today's day and age, the adults in our building and the adults outside of our building, because all of those people impact our children every single day. So it's a broader question than just, we're doing okay or we're not doing okay. So I'm interested to hear where we go with that as time progresses this winter.
And that actually led us to the last bullet, where we've met with each of our departments and team leaders and department chairs and have challenged them with looking at the whole child, looking at curriculum, at data, at resources, and setting goals for each of their departments. And, you know, what do you need to move your students forward? What do we need to help you move your students forward? So we found that to be an excellent activity. So we're going to move forward through the year trying to attain those goals. And some people have about 6, 7 goals. So it's really nice to see people embracing and actually, you know, looking at this and saying, we're going to work on this. You know, we want all our children to read. We want them to be able to write. We want them to do this across all the content areas. So I leave you with that piece. You did also ask us to present on STEM in our buildings. So I actually charged our IT TAs, our tech instructional aides, to work with the students to come up with a presentation. So this is the presentation. It goes in order, MES, then MMS, and then the high school. I'll just share the clips.
What? Can't hear what? Cute.
They told me this was a trailer. You only got a taste. If you want to see more, you have to come in and visit. We also work with the colleges in the area, and the students would come once a week and work with our students for a couple of hours. And these are some of the things they wanted to share, that their Marist friends, as they call them, they don't call them teachers or by their first name, they call them their friends. So I just want to show you this one. So our tech squad created that for our Marist students. So it was everything that the students designed and had them do when they came to the school, which was a lot. The MES or MMS tech squad. I don't know if you can see some of the.
Yeah.
This one doesn't. So just looking at some of the STEM projects that they do, the 3D printing, the slingshot cars, the mousetrap cars, balloon-powered cars, the kids are working daily. At the high school, looking at robotics. Looks like fun, right? A lot of new material that we're purchasing. And then we just formed at the high school a team of teachers who are now going to Model Schools, which is a technology group of teachers. And they learn a lot more, and they are starting to bring back more technology projects and initiatives to the district. Do you guys want to add anything to that? You think I covered it? Okay. So I think now, Mr. Callow, you're going to talk about food and more numbers. Thank you.
Thank you.
While they're transitioning into the next presentation, we have four seats to a forum that's going to be taking place at the end of January. The state is beginning to look at graduation requirements and what it means to be a graduate in New York State. So we're going to pull together a team of 4 to participate in that regional conversation down in Goshen. It'll be for 3 or 4 counties worth of input. Representatives from Albany are coming down, from the Board of Regents, and also from NICED. And we'll report back on it if we find anything groundbreaking. But the Board of Regents at Albany level has set a goal for themselves to review graduation standards and what it takes to graduate in New York State and see if there's any changes to that program as it exists right now. So if there's anything consistent in New York State, it's change.
Happy holidays to everybody.
Happy holidays.
My son brought in one of the drones and actually flew it in the kitchen, surprisingly to my staff one day in the high school program. So it's a great program up there with the drones and stuff. They have a blast with that, so thanks for showing that. I was quoted in the paper today, the local rag from 2 weeks ago, from Craig McKinney about something I said about 10 years ago about food stamps. So I didn't know there was a statute of limitations on things you say to Craig, but he digs through. I haven't seen Craig in many years. I was surprised to see my name getting quoted in the paper today. So say hello to Craig for me if you see him, please. So just want to give you a quick synopsis of the year and how it's going so far. Presentation. Employees and staff at the high school, we have a full-time district cook, and Mrs. Jensen's in the audience. Wave Cindy back there. Thanks for coming tonight. We have one assistant cook, and plus we have seven of our workers at the high school. Middle school currently has 6 total employees at the high school level. The middle school level. And at the elementary school, we have 2 assistant cooks, plus 7 workers total down there. So any questions on that? That's about...
There's 2 cafeterias, right, Fred, in the elementary school?
Yes, we have a 3 through 5 serving line on one side and the K through 2 line on the other side, but we use one central kitchen down there to get our food out, so.
Fred, what's the difference between a cook and an assistant cook?
The district cook has a title and sees over all the assistant cooks in the district. The assistant cooks cook at each of those other buildings. Anne Marie at the elementary school, Lena at the middle school, and they prepare and heat the food up. Cindy does a lot of the batch cooking at the high school, and we satellite that food down to them. Yeah, basically in a nutshell. Free reduced percentages as of last week. I just updated these. At the elementary school, we were at 42.63%. The middle school is 36.82%. And the high school is at 33.55% for a district average of 38.6%. I gave you a number there from 2 years ago just to see how it's been steadily increasing in the district. I've been here for over 20 years. I can remember when it was back at 18% when I first started or so. So the district has certainly changed over the years, and our need for free reduced lunches has increased. Questions regarding that?
Quick question on that as well. So do you think overall, if you really were to analyze this, is it the dynamics of the district or is it actually the criteria?
It's well, we do the downloads from the state. So the state tells me who's on the free reduced. 20 years ago, we did we did like 400 applications. Now we just do a few applications. So the dynamics in our district is changing, as you're noted before on your breakdown there. So. Okay. School lunch prices. Middle school and high school is at $3.05 this year. Elementary school is at $2.85. And here is your reimbursement rates, which is pretty eye-opening. A free lunch, basically, your reimbursement for a free lunch is $3.53. A reduced lunch this year is $3.52 and change. And what the state did this year, which was nice, we no longer collect the 25 cents for the reduced child. The state actually picked that up this year. So they're giving us that 25 cents that we used to collect for the reduced kids. So when you say free or reduced, basically everybody's free. As long as you get on as a reduced child, you're getting free lunch because we're not collecting that 25 cents. So that really helps out because a lot of times those kids didn't have the quarter and those charges would go up. And even though it's only 25 cents a day, but at the end of the week it's $1.25. And before you know it, at the end of the month it's $5. And before the end of the school year, it could be upwards of $50, $60. So That really helped out this year with the state picking up the 25 cents. Paid lunches are at, if you look at, you get $3.49 for that paid lunch. It's only $3.29 at the elementary school level because of the difference in the price that the kids are paying for lunch from the previous page. So with that said, I always say that's all we get to make the lunch up. That $3.53 is what we have to cook a child's lunch every day, and I don't think $3.53 gets you a soup down here at Frida's at lunchtime, I'm pretty sure. So just keep that in mind in perspective of what we try to do with our pennies that we get every day. So we appreciate the board's support with the school lunch program, and so do the children. Breakfast and lunch counts. This year we've increased from using the numbers from last year, from September through November, we've increased breakfast by 343 more breakfasts this year than we served last year. And at lunches, we've also increased this year over 1,700 more lunches this year. So to go what Mr. Brooks said before, how do we know we're doing a little bit better? So we try to go by our numbers. It's pretty straightforward there. So any questions on that?
What do you think's driving that, Fred?
Well, we improved our breakfast program immensely at the high school this year, and we really picked that up. But we try to give the kids what they want. I mean, that's basically, we do some surveys and stuff out there. You try not to put items on the menu. A lot of times they get ragged about because it's the same old stuff on the menu. But we put on the menu what kids want to buy and what kids want to eat. So sometimes the menu is the same month after month after month. You look at it and go, oh, there's nothing new on the menu. Well, when we try new things and the counts go down, that's not good. So we try to give the kids what they want. And there's a lot of varieties at all the schools. You only see on the menu one thing, but there's many of things that are mentioned on the menu, like paninis at the high school, paninis at the middle school we started doing a couple years ago. We have the hot food every day. We have the salad stations at the elementary school level, at the high school level. So we try to balance everything out by still meeting the regulations and still trying to provide a good lunch at the cost which you just saw back.
Basically, because you've expanded what's offered, you believe that's what's helping bring the counts up?
Yeah. In a nutshell, we try to give the kids what they want, and that's hopefully what they come in and buy it. So, next course, we had a nice newsletter done a couple weeks ago on the blast of items that we're doing more at the high school for the breakfast stations. So we're doing the made-to-order breakfast paninis in the morning, the smoothies, which are fantastic, the blueberry and strawberry, our old standards, and all these things you see here are offered every single day. They're just like picked and choose every other day. So the high school students can talk to you more about that. The breakfast pizza, obviously we have cereal every day. 10, 12 different varieties of cereal, 3 or 4 different varieties of bagels, waffles, French toast, and our flavored coffee station is a great hit. And I also saw on Facebook we got some negative comments. Our school taxes are going to that coffee machine over there. We didn't pay anything for the flavored coffee station. The air pots come and you just buy the coffee and put the coffee in it. We didn't buy any new setup or anything like that. We just got some more air pots to hold the coffee in. So there's always some negative people out there that want to backlash on things, but the kids like it. The kids like the flavored coffee. And I think it's a good thing, and it's better than them stopping along the way on the highway on the way in. So,
Hey, Fred, when do they have a chance to do breakfast? Is it like during a set time before school starts, or if they have?
Each school's a little different. At the elementary school level, it's when they first get off the bus. The kids come in. At the high school level, at middle school level, it's the same thing. They can come in. It's a grab and go at the middle school. We're doing. Mrs. Clinton left on me. And at the high school, it's they come in. They have. We're open the first 3 periods of the day. Yes, until about 9 o'clock or so. Then we switch over and go right to lunch. So until about 9:15, 9:30 every morning, we're open at the high school. They come in during the periods. We close the door between the bells when the kids are passing. So to control the chaos there, we don't want kids walking around. So anything on that? I have one more thing for you before.
You serving breakfast all day?
Serving breakfast all day? No. And we actually started doing breakfast at the, Mrs. Walsh left on me too. At the elementary school, there was a need for, always on the 2-hour delays, the kids at the elementary school level get off the bus at 10:45-ish, almost 11 o'clock, and they usually go right to lunch. But this year it was brought to my attention by some teachers that some kids are coming in without breakfast, unfortunately, at that time of the day. So we started doing a grab and go for the kids that needed it, because some of the kids don't eat until like 1 o'clock-ish. So to do that, we started doing a grab and go this year for the elementary school students on the 2-hour delays to help some of those kids take the food right back to their classrooms, because they really don't have time to sit there and eat for 10-15 minutes when they've already had a 2-hour delay. So it's working out well for the 2-hour delays, but I do wish for 60 and sunny every day of the winter, so I'm not a big fan of the delays. So that's it on that part. Do you have any questions on that so far?
I just wanted to say my daughter loves the lunch. She likes the salad stations, the panini, and she's got to be, otherwise that line I hear is really long. And she likes the Taco Tuesdays. And it's really amazing, because to try and get information out of her about her day when we start talking is really hard, but she always is willing to tell me about lunch.
It's hard at my house too, so don't feel bad about that. Everything's good at my house. It's always good.
And she's always saying the food's good, so.
So the last thing I brought up, and I don't have a slide for it, was sharing tables have come to my attention, that we want to do some sharing tables. And for the record, Mrs. Reed and I had a great conversation at the Section 9 football game about it, as we stood there and froze the last 10 minutes and watched the debacle happen in front of us. So after talking to her about some sharing tables and moving forward, my take is this on sharing tables. We're Marlboro, and we're better, I think, than having our kids that are in need of food having to go up to a table and grab a table that's left over from another child. There's cross-contamination issues and a bunch of other things that concern me about that. But what I'm proposing is, if somebody out there, a social worker, a teacher, an administrator, a school board member, knows of a family that's in need of more food, and that child or children in that family need more food, just like we do our backpack program, please bring it to our attention. My staff and I will go above and beyond to help that child out if it means a little extra portion, another slice of pizza, some snack to bring home later on, an extra apple for the book bag for the ride home on the bus. That's a lot better, and that child doesn't have to go up to a table where, everybody else is watching, that, you feel bad enough for them as it is. So let's go a different route, and let's help the children out, and that's our job. Mrs. Reed's got a big heart over there, and she wants to feed the kids, and that's my job, and we want to feed the kids too. So we're definitely all for it. So I think we just need to take a little different approach and get away from the sharing table idea, but do it differently than that. So
I definitely agree with you, Mr. Kelly. I think that's a great idea. Not everyone has to see it or know it. I think our teachers know who are the ones, especially if they come in the morning, they know they're hungry, if they didn't bring a lunch, if they have a lunch. Like you said, bring home an extra apple, give them a little extra snack.
Right.
And I think our social workers and our principals know who those students are.
Right.
And maybe we should keep a lookout for them. Because, again,
right.
these kids are hungry.
So if anybody knows of a child that's in need at any grade level, we're willing to help them out and give them what they need to succeed in school, and we don't want anybody going hungry any time of the day. So
I thought that was a great idea, what you came up with. So
thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I don't want to see, especially when they're in school or they go home on a bus, we don't know if they're going home to some food, no food. So for me, thank you very much for that idea. So we just need to have our social workers and everybody just keep an eye out and let them, maybe let the cafeteria know in the morning, we have a kid over here, may need a little extra. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Hey, public comment on agenda items. Any public comment on the agenda? Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, approve the contracts, agreements, and reports as presented. Personnel actions, official Board of Ed meeting minutes of 11/21 and 12/5, donations, equipment dispositions, financial reports for November. Can I have a motion? Susan. Second. Karen. Any discussion? John Marrow.
Yes.
John Cantone.
Yes.
James.
Yes.
Susan.
Yes.
Karen.
Yes.
Joanne.
Yes.
And myself, yes. Okay, section 179D, tax deduction. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, approves section 179D, tax deduction for owners of buildings in which energy efficient systems are installed as presented. Can I have a motion?
Motion.
Karen, second. James, discussion. Mike, you want to explain that one for,
Thank you.
or Rose? Yep. Sorry.
We had mentioned this previously at a board meeting. There's an opportunity for the installer of particular heating and windows that were done at the middle school years ago to be eligible for a tax credit that we cannot use, nor can the architect use. So it's the recommendation of the attorneys to, by passing this resolution, allow the manufacturers to get that tax incentive.
And it's only now becoming available?
I'm not sure if it's just now or the deadline for applying for it is coming shortly. That I don't know, John.
Yeah, I was curious.
Any other discussion? Joanne?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Next stamp agreements. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, approve the next stamp pilot agreement and the education contribution agreement as presented. Can I have a motion? Karen, second. James, any discussion?
So I was a little confused reading this, Frank. Is this an application that went through like the IDC? IDA, sorry.
It's a little bit different because it's a solar project, so it's more of a local experience through the town of Marlborough. And it's automatic pieces that they qualify for. We were then able to successfully negotiate on top of that the educational agreement that is it's like a community benefit agreement. So
Yeah, but we didn't, we weren't part of the negotiation of the pilot itself, right?
a little bit.
We were?
Yep, a little bit. It's pretty programmed how the calculation is, so we weren't able to influence it that much.
Okay.
It's a calculation from the state and the region. So, I mean, we tweaked it a little bit, but really the benefit is the few $1,000s that we're going to get from the community benefit agreement.
Okay. It did look a little different. That's why I was asking.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Any other questions? John Marrow?
Yes.
John Cantone?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Refuse bid. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, award the refuge bid to County Waste and Recycling Services Incorporated, 1927 Route 9, Clifton Park, New York, 12056, for the period of January 1, 2020 to November 30th, 2020, as presented. Can I get a motion? James, second. John Cantone. Any discussion?
So this is a new award, not a renewal?
Correct.
Or not a continuation of a
It's not a
current?
continuation. It's a new bid award, which is now on state contract.
So is it only through November 30th because that's when the state contract ends?
So, yes, of next year. Correct.
Because it's it's an 11-month award, which is kind of short, but the state
Correct.
contract ends in November. Until there's a new bid, we can't do anything.
Correct.
Okay. I was just wondering why it was only 11 months. Anybody else? Joanne?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Capital Market Advisors Contract. Resolved that the Board of Education, upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools, has reviewed the Financial Advisors Services Agreement with Capital Markets Advisors LLC approval of the terms and conditions of the agreement, and further authorizes the president to sign the financial advisors services agreement. Can I have a motion? James, second. John Morrow. Any discussion?
Could you just explain a little bit more what this is involving?
Rose, you want to
I'm sorry.
CMA?
CMA, I apologize. They are our financial advisors, and we've had a long standing relationship with them. This is a renewal of their contract. They are key in advising us, especially now going to the building project, about our bonds, in addition to our bond counsel, of course, and strategic planning in regards to budgeting.
And they actually are the ones that will put the bonds out on the street once we authorize them to sell the bonds.
We have used them before.
Yep.
Yes.
Any other questions? John?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
James?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Joanne?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Old business. Is there any old business? Any new business?
I have a couple of things. With being on break, will the business office be open? And if so, what will the hours be, and can we post them up on the website?
The business office is technically closed. All the clerical staff is not there. The four of us do work our time over the break, but we're not going to be having it widely open for business purposes, because we're going to be out maybe there, maybe doing things around the district, so.
The other thing was, I know I went to the touchdown dinner, and Frank did too, and it was very, very nice. They did a beautiful job like they always do, so we have to give them thanks. But I would like to somehow come up with a letter to thank them, because they do donate, but we don't see it at our board meetings. Like I noticed they had talked about getting the boys new jackets when they're on the football field, the black ones that they had when they were playing the games. I know they get hand warmers or whatever, but we never get to see it, so we never get to say thank you and send them a letter. So I would like to recognize them, and if we can find out what they've donated to our students or our school district, it would be a nice way to say thank you.
But we don't, none of the clubs, the support clubs for any of the organizations do that.
I agree recommending, absolutely, there's tremendous support that comes, let me finish.
Yeah.
There's tremendous support that comes from a number of different booster organizations, clubs that support kids that things do. So I am absolutely appreciative of what the Touchdown Club does for football. I certainly won't want to just single them out and thank them, because multiply that times
any of
40 other clubs, and
right.
it's wonderful, Joanne, what they do. You're right.
Right. But we should be recognized. We do backpack program, and we ask for parents or anybody that gives a donation.
A little bit different, though.
So for me, it's
we run that.
Right.
Yeah.
But again, it shouldn't matter, because we used to do that. Is if they donated, like they donated the uniforms one year, we thanked them. One of the other clubs, one of the booster clubs, did something else, and we thanked them. It should be recognized, because
I understand what you're saying. Right now, we don't have a way of tracking that, so recognizing it, I'm just thinking out loud, Joanne. I'm not saying no, not to do it, but we don't have a way.
So if you're buying uniforms,
Joanne, we don't have a way of tracking it right now for all of the clubs. So if because right now you get the recognitions that we use, or that we do for any of the donations to district. We've developed a system for that, so that we immediately recognize them, send a thank you letter for. So these donations are not the same. They're not the same. It's the student organization, the club, raising money for their club and buying things for their club or sport. So it's not something that is donated to the district. They raise for their kids and give to their kids.
actually, they are donated to the district, because it's like the football jackets. They donated uniforms. They
Yeah,
don't
but
take them
they
home.
become the property of the child.
The child, not the district
Give them
stuff.
to the kid. So I don't have a way of
So
tracking
now,
it, is what
now
I'm
I'm
saying.
confused, because
They don't buy the football uniforms.
like the hand warmers that they bought that the kids use every year. So they're purchased every year. So when the kids graduate, they take those with them.
I don't know.
I'm
It's not
confused.
something that we track because it's
Like
done.
the football jackets that they bought, those beautiful jackets, to keep them warm on the field. So when these kids graduate, they'll leave with them?
Joanne, the things that we
If
buy.
they buy them
the-
for them, they would leave with them.
Right, the equipment that we buy as a school district from the school district's budget, we keep. That's our stuff. The clubs, the sports, the different student organizations also fundraise to then also enhance maybe that package. You know, they want to have a practice uniform or whatever.
Right.
I don't have a way of tracking that.
All right.
So
I just thought it was
it's
just
a private kind of a thing for them. Not private that we can't know, but we don't control
Apparently
it.
it is a private thing.
Well, but
because, you know,
there is a way we.
No, it's not
I
private.
just wanted to
They're-
say thank you because
Joanne,
they have supported our students.
It goes through the
and-
student.
Okay.
It's not private in a way that it's private that you can't know. You guys get the financial reports, and those financial reports detail the budgets for those clubs and activities. Those are student-run and student-owned, really, accounts, and that's where the money
We
is.
don't get financials on this, and
Well,
like I
that's,
said,
some of them are outside, touchdown
it's
clubs
on the other
not.
side of the
okay.
pit.
Yeah,
right?
there
That's
are,
different. Yeah,
there are
okay.
other, there are a
That's
multitude
different.
of clubs.
Right.
But the way we thank them is what we all do all year by going to the events, going to the dinner,
Right.
saying thank you to the people that do it.
Yeah.
We represent each one of us when we go to any of those things, whether it's track by purchasing the shopping bags or buying raffle tickets or 50, you know, the umpteen things that we
Well-
all do all year long.
Anyway.
That's the way we should all be, and we all represent us as a group, thanking them for those things.
Well, I guess I'd like to say thank you because it was a nice dinner.
Oh,
and
yeah.
They do a lot for our students, and it should be recognized.
Without
So,
a doubt.
Thank you.
Any other new items? Recognition of district residents.
Catherine Ciriello, Marlboro. Joanne, thank you for thanking the group of people that put that dinner together. As someone who was unbelievably involved full-time, when I tell you from April to that dinner every year for 5 years, it makes me happy to know that you're recognizing it. In the past, I am no longer involved in the Touchdown Club. I had a personal illness in my family, and that prevented that from happening, so I stepped down. But I would say that in the past, the Touchdown Club is a separate entity. We're not covered by the school. We're separate. So all of our fundraising was done by an unbelievable amount of volunteers all year round. We had in the past, and will continue, I'm assuming, to donate things to the school. And when we formally donate them, by all means, that's how you track and that's how you say thank you. But on a day-to-day, come to the games, buy the raffle tickets, congratulate the kids, smile at the people doing the work, recognize the people doing the work. That's the best thank you can give us. And a shameless plug, we are selling. I am involved in track, up to my neck right now, because all these clubs need things. Now that is part of the school. And Tom Fassel's working his tail off to get money to the kids. So if you want a recyclable grocery bag, please see me or any other track athlete, but continue to support all the sports and all the activities because they can't afford to do all the things they do for the kids just on what's budgeted. So, but go Dukes and see me if you need a bag.
Thanks, Kat. Any other public comment? Motion to adjourn? Karen, second. James? Any objections?
Teresa?
Everybody have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy Hanukkah and a Happy New Year. I will apologize today. Susan Horton will be running the January meetings because they both